Welcome to Food, Wine, and Whiskey, a podcast about having fun conversations on tasty dishes, vinos, and spirits from around the world. Rob is your host. He is an avid home chef, WSET Level 2 award in wine, and a whiskey drinker and collector. Time to set the table. Here's Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for joining in and listening to our show. And it's going to be a fun one today. We got Carter back on an episode. Been a little while, buddy. Good to have you back.
Yeah.
People have missed your voice.
I don't know. I mean, I've missed being here.
Yeah, you've been busy creating humans.
Yeah. I've got a daughter now, so she takes up a little bit of time, and so it's nice to be back on the show for sure.
Yeah, good to have you back. And Leo back on the show. Been on a few times. How you doing, buddy?
I'm glad to hear Matt's voice again as well.
Yeah. And see his pretty face.
That's right.
It is a pretty face.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to age gracefully.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks.
You're doing a good job. All right. Everybody can see by our title today, we're going to do Bourbon Talk with an Eagle Rare blind. And the three of us were in on the one of the bourbons that's in this blind, which is an Eagle Rare pick from Ryan's Liquor. Man, that took a while. How long did it take for that to find? I mean, we picked that darn near a year ago.
It was almost a year, I think, or if not over a year, actually.
I feel like it was like around the holidays of 2022 when we picked it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And it came out, November of
2023.
most recent year. Yeah, 2023.
So a little over a year.
Dang, man.
Now, I have a couple bottles. I know you guys have a couple bottles. I have not even sipped on this yet. I think both of you have. Have you tried our pick?
Oh, yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no doubts that you guys could pick this out.
I mean, no doubt.
Fat chance of that happening.
Fat chance. Okay, Bourbon Talk, the topic today while we do this blind, I thought it would be good to just kind of talk about what are we seeing in the bourbon world? What do we, I mean, there's things that I get excited about, and some of those things people might say, what the hell, dude, why are you excited about that? It's because I'm glad the craze is going away. I'll start there. I feel like the bourbon hysteria is kind of settling a little bit. I think we're kind of starting to level out. We've hit our peak, and I think we're kind of on this leveling. And the only reason I think we're not on a downward kind of trend is I still think there's a lot of younger people getting into bourbon. And that's just kind of keeping it afloat where it still has some hype to it.
I think it still has like a lot of appeal, and I think it's going to continue to have that, but I will say I have noticed the crazy stuff going away a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not that, I mean, I think you're not going to start seeing GTS sitting on the shelf or anything like that anytime soon, but like some of the big hype, like people are going just absolutely nuts over Smoke Wagon or something like that. I don't.
Yeah, that
Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond.
Yeah.
that stuff is more readily available on the shelf now. Smoke Wagon, Heaven Hill, BIB.
Yeah, that's one of the indicators for me has been over the last. I guess for me, I'll be honest. A lot of times when I go to the liquor stores or big box stores, I don't even go to the bourbon aisle too much anymore. I might go down the tequila aisle or the rum aisle, but I haven't been hitting the bourbon aisle a lot up until about a couple of months ago, and that was only because of, we'll get into it in a minute, what I was kind of starting to see in some of the secondary groups that we're in, and what was happening there. So I said, let me just kind of go check out what's going on in the bourbon aisle. And that's where I started to see, the Smoke Wagon, to your point, Leo, still on the shelf, and the Heaven Hill Bottled and Bond, which, people are going, big deal. But, if you look at 2 years ago, you couldn't find those. Store owners would keep those behind the counter and not put them out. It would be in the glass case at some places, and marked up quite a bit. And now they're at retail from what I'm seeing, and that's a big indicator for me. And another one is, I think the Elijah Craig Rye has stayed on the shelf pretty much, but the Toasted I'm starting to see more everywhere. And I've traveled a little bit the last couple months, and I've seen this not only in Texas, but in Missouri and in Arizona and other places.
Well, to your point, I've also seen a lot of just Elijah Craig barrel proof store picks, and actually just their general barrel proof releases.
A, B, and C.
Actually getting to the shelves.
Yeah, there's a lot more of those on the market for sure. The Elijah Craig picks.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because when I was in Phoenix, I stopped in a pretty cool liquor store called Trevor's. I mean, really cool liquor store. And they had the Elijah Craig barrel proof, the A 124. Had hit the shelf there. And I'm going, man, we don't get that in Texas till what, April or March or April, something like that. But they already had it out there. You're right. It was on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean that's an indication for me. And then I'd say like the big thing is I'm starting to see secondary prices falling on stuff, just in general. I mean things that like GTS, it was like $1,000 or more in some cases. It's now settling down into like the $800 range.
People are laughing at you, Carter, going, settling down to $800?
Yeah, I know that sounds nuts, but I mean,
because retail on that is what? Retail.
Oh, I mean, a
$139,
little over $100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on like what bottles, right? So some are maintaining a good premium. There is big drops in other stuff. And I think it's, a combination of kind of the crazy settling down around the bourbon boom, but it's also like working in finance, like economic situations that are going on, is that you had a lot of artificial money in the market during COVID, coined with inflation that people are going through now. And I just think that a lot of people just don't have the money to spend to support that secondary market.
That's true.
That's a very good point as well.
Yeah.
Which, for those of us who like those bourbons and are really in it for the long haul, we get to rip the benefits of that here, hopefully fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to go back in the day where you could just walk into a store and then, it's not
Get lucky.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Who doesn't like getting lucky?
I mean, who doesn't like getting lucky? But seriously, like finding like a 107, just like, hey, it's on the shelf. That's super cool. I'm going to buy that. You know,
and we'll speak from the Texas perspective, this market, because we get treated pretty well for bourbons here. Mm-hmm. To your point, 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, during the allocated season, October through beginning of January, maybe a little bit longer, I would find at least a couple of those all the time, 107s or Weller 12s or something like that. Now you don't see them at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, to me, E.H. Taylor small batch for a while was like, oh, that's a good bottle. I can get it for like $30. It was like, yeah, pretty good bottle, and there was a time up until I'm hoping it's coming back, but there was a time there for years that you could not find that bottle. Yes. Like just sitting there.
I remember in 16 and 17 when I started getting into bourbon a lot more, what we're having in our blind today, Eagle Rare, I get sub 30. It's like $28, $29 all the time.
Yeah, still a great value.
It still is. Mm-hmm. I think it's now maybe 34, 35, which is still, it's a 10-year bourbon. So great value when you can find it. But again, I would run into those multiple times during the course of a year and have the opportunity to buy one. And now, I mean, we still get opportunities. A lot of times it's through a pick or something like that. But just walking into a store and getting one of those, you just don't see it as much anymore.
Yeah.
Or I don't. I don't know if you guys are.
No, I mean, there was a time that I definitely could find Eagle Rare once in a while just kind of on the shelf. And it's like, all right, that's cool. Like, good bottle. I'll usually get a bottle, And he didn't feel bad, about, hey, $25, no big deal. But
And I know we're not going to get back to the point where, I remember when I first got into bourbon, I got lucky and got a George T. Stagg from a store owner. I'm not going to get back there. But I would like to get back to once in a while finding a Stagg Junior, on the shelf or available to us.
Formerly known as Junior.
Yeah.
Yeah, formerly Junior. He's graduated.
Anybody know why they changed that? What was the reason to take Junior off? Somebody told me they thought it diminished the brand a little bit, that it made it seem lesser than.
I actually kind of like the Stagg Junior.
So did I.
The Junior. Because you got GTS, which is going to be, generally it's hanging around a 15 to 17-year age statement.
Yeah.
And the Stagg Junior, has all of the stuff that, Buffalo Trace puts out for its standard line is generally around 7 years old. So there you go. There's the Junior. He's the little guy.
Made perfect sense.
But it's still barrel proof, same mash bill. So I prefer the Stagg Junior as well.
Yeah. I don't know why they got away from that, but hey, whatever. I also don't understand why they call it Weller Foolproof. Foolproof at at 114.
Well, full meaning what? That's the max they can go.
Is it? I mean,
They're full, buddy.
Well,
It's
full. Like, what's entry proof? Maybe it's a reference to the entry proof.
It's 114, isn't it? Don't
Yeah.
they enter at 114? So that's their full.
Is that what they enter it?
Yeah, I think their barrel entry is 114 at Buffalo Trace.
Oh no, they enter it really high. They enter at the highest.
Max is 125.
Yeah, so they enter in all I know their standard offerings enter in at 125.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, GTS also stands for Google that shit, so I can look.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Here he goes.
We got someone doing some research here, but I'm pretty sure. So I'm curious about that. I think they have a high barrel entry proof
Man, okay. We're gonna find out.
because their White Dog is 125.
It's 125 proof?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it is. I know Turkey and other places barrel entry is less than what, the
Oh yeah,
maximum
yeah.
can
They're
be.
they're lower.
It looks like it's 125.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does foolproof mean? That's a good question.
I mean, I
That's a
don't
good
know.
question.
It's the fullest of proof. I don't know.
So, Leo, I was talking to a guy, just talking about Weller. I thought was kind of funny. I mentioned this to Matt. We both got kind of a kick out of it. Talking to a guy, a bourbon guy up in Ohio, and he was talking to me just bourbon stuff. And then all of a sudden he said, hey, man, I traded 7 greens for an orange. Have you ever done that? And I went, 7 greens for an orange? And he went, yeah. And I went, I have no idea what you're talking about. He goes, you guys don't get greens down there? And I go, I've never heard any bourbon called green. What are you talking about? Obviously.
Yeah, the Weller Special Reserve.
Yeah, have
for,
you heard this before?
Single barrel.
The greens.
So, I mean, people try and trade up all the time. Usually it's, exercising futility. But, I mean, I guess if you have a lot of excess
It's a
Weller
volume
Special Reserve, I mean, you got with 7 bottles at $30 a piece. What are you looking at? $210 retail
Yeah.
to trade up to a Weller single barrel, which is going for what, $600-700. So, I mean, if you can find somebody that'll do that trade,
Well, my bigger thing was the colors that they call it that.
The nomenclature, greens
So-
and blue.
And I asked him, I go, so, I mean, Weller 12, we always say down here in Texas Weller 12, or we say
Yeah.
foolproof, or we say
they
107.
say blacks.
That's all they say. I say, you don't say Weller black? And he goes, nope. We just go, hey, I got a black in the back if you want one. You have a red too? Yeah, I'll take a red.
That could get dicey.
I don't have a red, but just got a white in if you want that. And I'm like, really? That's the way they mention everything up in Ohio.
Hey,
I mean, I kind of like it. I just
I
finished,
kind of like it too.
I just finished watching The Wire, and it kind of reminds me of standing on a corner, like, hey, I got whites, I got blacks, I got oranges, greens. What you need?
Yeah. I was telling Matt that. I was like, because he caught me off guard when he was like, man, I traded these greens. And I was like, traded greens? That's what threw me off. And he was talking to Weller
It
Special.
would have thrown me off as well. I would never reference
Weller by the color.
colors.
Yeah. So he said
But
he'll.
that is the chase the rainbow, right? So
Chase
you
the
got,
rainbow.
You got horsey tops. You can chase the rainbow.
I wish they'd stop profiling these Wellers, man.
That's what I was going to say. Like the Stag Junior, removing the junior is just, it could have just been like, hey, it's marketing, right? We'll make sure everybody rushes out to buy the last of the juniors, and then they'll want to get the first edition of the Stags.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. So, but seeing those, what else you guys got? Any other topics that jump out to you? I'll throw one that I had. I know I just asked you a question. I'm jumping in, but you go ahead, Carter. You got one?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is the thing with all the non-distilling producers also diluting the market
and craft,
and
even if they're producing their own craft, I tie them in together.
Yeah, I mean, do you think are those guys going to stay?
No.
I feel like there's so much bourbon on the market right now, and the likelihood of
I think they're the DVDs of the bourbon world. They're here for a little while and then they're going away.
The non-distiller.
the non-distiller producers or the craft producers.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably a reason that you can find Smoke Wagon on the shelf or Heaven Hill Bottle and Bonnets is because you just walk in a store and the shelves are just flooded with generic MGP product that's 4 to 6 years old, and
if you're lucky,
slap a different
4 to 6 years old.
Slap a different label on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And talk about price, $80.
Yeah, price premiums, and so I think it's like a good strategy if you're trying to get into the distilling game, and so you're getting product on the shelf to try and get some revenue coming back in, but you've also got a still, and you're producing your own mash as a bridge while your stuff is aging. We're definitely going to see a lot of stuff disappear where people are just, as a strategy, just buying MGP, bottling it, and throwing it on shelves. I don't see it sticking around if that's the long haul game.
Well, the bigger question for me is, there's just tons of them. And to your point of how long are they going to stick around is the volume versus the QPR, right? The quality per price.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not paying $80 for a 4-year-old bourbon from some of these players. And I get, hey, support your local guys, support the little guys. I get all that. But financially, it's got to make sense. I'm just not going to dump money to dump money. And when I can go get rare breed for $45 still, that's 6 to 9 year old bourbon, why would I ever pay $80 for a 4-year-old bourbon?
Well, I would say, I wouldn't necessarily call it supporting the little guy if they're not using it as a means to establish their own product, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like a cash grab. And then you got to think about, the people that are doing that, who is blending it or who is picking out the single barrels, and, what kind of trust can you put in the selection process of the product that you're buying at a premium for a younger age product as well.
Yeah, I guess it's just the market is so diluted with so many different brand names that I'm totally unfamiliar with these days. I mean, honestly, if I were to go to the liquor store, I could identify, I don't know, half of them. I mean, so, some of the brands on there, I don't even know what the heck they are. Unless it says it's comes from Indiana, which some of them do, but I really have no idea. And they're new distillers for a while that were just popping up all the time there. And to Rob's point, they're trying to make 60, 70, $80 on a young whiskey. I mean, maybe that works if there's just so much craziness going on in the market, but I think things are settling down, and I don't know where those guys are going to be.
Yeah.
Well, and I will kind of call it right both sides of the fence a little bit. I'll defend non-distilling producers a little bit when they do something different to the whiskey, and some of the reasons we liked Smoke Wagon or West.
High West.
Yeah. Even Widow Jane, they would get some juice from MGP, but they would do some cool stuff to it, make it unique, make it their own. And I was okay with that. The only other thing I would add to that is age. We have a friend, Christopher Hart, who has done some non-distilling producing stuff, but it's, 14, 15-year-old bourbons or 6, 8-year-old ryes, still at a pretty good price, for what you're getting there. Those are some exceptions that I would say.
Yeah, they're looking at finishing some of the ryes as well. I think, you mentioned High West, so that's they have transitioned into using their own distillate. And then if you think about, some other brand like Smooth Ambler, right? Not big as a topic of conversation for what we were just discussing. They started out with a lot of MGP product, a lot older, so you saw higher age statements as they had that inventory on hand, but they've also transitioned into their own distillate as well.
Or are they making their own? Because I knew that they were no. You're saying Smooth Ambler. I'm thinking of Old Scout. They're known for going out and finding barrels that they like and then bottling it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I did know about the High West thing, and I think that this is the first year that they're doing it. I think this year is the year that
they've been blending in their own distillate. Yeah. This may be the first year that they've gone straight to their stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it's going to change. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, if it's going to, hopefully it's better, but it is going to change the product, change distilleries. I mean, it's going to change the product.
Yeah. You talk about the financial side of it, and a lot of these bigger producers like Buffalo Trace and other big producers have expanded production and are, somewhat playing I don't want to call it a risk, but taking a chance that the market's going to stay here for long enough that when they build and produce this bourbon and let it sit for a while,
Well,
people are still drinking the brown juice.
Yeah, I mean that's a very valid point, right? Is the demand going to be there once their expansion is complete? Because they're going, but they're pushing all the chips to the center of the table.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it is just like economies of scale, right? So if you look at people that are just trying to get started up, and they're putting out source product, but they're still trying to make their own distillate and barrel it and waiting for it to age, is you got like Buffalo Trace, where they can keep the values down because of the economies of scale and having so much product on hand. And then even if, the demand drops long term, they may be able to put out so much juice that everybody else goes by the wayside, and they could be like the last player in town, right? Where they're like, hey, my cost per bottle is so low, I can keep the value down, and the quality is so much higher because I have all the stock aging as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think this has happened throughout history in different markets. I mean, the market gets crazy and gets wild. Mm-hmm. Lots of new players enter in. As trending, like with business, things expand, things contract. Yeah. The stronger people who enter into the business, that have a good product that is going to stand the test of time, they won't fail. They'll keep their business. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of the guys just trying to jump in and get a quick buck, I mean, they're gonna fall off.
Saying that, it's funny. It's like you think about like the old overhaul is like one of the things that some of the companies have done, in the last 5-10 years is they'll revive an old distillery, bring back the name, the story, but it's a completely different product.
Yeah.
Think about like maybe 20, 30 years from now, there's going to be somebody that like opens up a business and revives the brand from like this MGP source
product. Yeah.
That would be fun. It's just funny to think about.
I think about Peerless being one like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, talking about Weller, I do want to mention, you bring up a very good point, Leo. That for me, I've always appreciated Weller not getting into the hype game, if you will. I mean, from their prices have stayed the same from, I don't know if you want to call it their lower level, but, their $30, $40, $50 bottles when we talk about Eagle Rare and each Taylor small batch and things like that, really haven't, they could put those things retail $100 each and they'd still fly off the shelf, and they haven't done that. And on their higher end bottles, they've kept those prices. We
like
just talked about. Yeah, everything's a little over $100 if you can get it at retail. My question is, do they have anything that's just played to the Taylorism that we see? I mean, I think about like Wild Turkey with the Rick House release at $250 a bottle.
I would say it's like what you're talking about, the green versus orange, is that from a marketing perspective, they definitely played to the boom in all the different just color labels that they have, right? So
hey, getting a bigger portfolio of some different I'm good with that, but their price point, $50, $60 still a bottle, where you go, Wild Turkey's done the same thing, and the Rick House is $250 a bottle.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Rick House and like the Traditions was like $400, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Master's Keep is expensive.
$200 a bottle now. It used to be about $130. Now it's up to around $200.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey's kind of leaned in on the Taylorism a little bit more.
Jim Beam's come out with some things that are younger whiskeys that they're around $200 a bottle because it's a special release.
The hardened stuff.
Yeah, the hardened stuff.
And one of them was like super, like 2 years old, right?
Yeah,
$200.
Like, what? Yeah.
I mean, I could see what they were doing to like have different ends of the spectrum age wise. Like, hey, here's a really young one. Here's a really much older one as part of like a similar release. But the pricing point, like maybe charge a premium for packaging, and put it at $50, $60. But I'm not getting anywhere close to that 2-year-old whiskey for north of $100.
I mean, 2-year-old. Can you imagine 2-year-old whiskey for over $100?
I bet they couldn't keep it on the shelf.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy. Here's a brand from Jim Beam that I think flies way under the radar and has for as long as I've been in the whiskey game. When they had the picks back, several years ago, you get 14, 15-year-old picks, the Knob Creek line.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still great value. You can get the 9-year 100 proof for still around $38.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
12 years around $60.
Yeah, that's still pretty good. I Knob Creek's kind of a go-to for me. Like, just if I just want to grab a bottle that I know is always going to be there, and to have a 9-year age statement, for that price point.
And the proof.
Yeah, and the proof. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good grab.
It's really good.
But anyway.
Okay, what do you say we dive into the noses on this while we
I'm
keep
ready.
talking?
All right.
Guess we could have been doing that.
It is a great smell.
That's what she said.
Little baking spices.
Definitely that cherry. I mean, that cherry is amazing.
Getting kind of like a lighter nose on B.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the ethanol on it like A does. Doesn't have that bite.
Ooh. All right. I know who my nose contenders are.
Well, all of them are contenders.
We all nosed A first, but it was definitely the strongest.
C is sweet though.
Yeah.
Like that it's like very like
Candy.
sugary
Like a-
sweet. Yeah.
Like a light citrus as well.
That's an oddball. C's kind of like an oddball.
A now is kind of perfumey a little bit to me too.
It is. I wish my wife would wear this perfume.
Be nosing her everywhere you went.
Let me get a smell.
Okay, favorite nose?
I think A for me still. C is nice though. C's so sweet.
I think I'm going to say C on the second pass. I was getting a lot more baking spices on A initially. It's probably just the fresh nose. And
Yeah.
now it's really perfumey, like you said. I mean, still a little bit. I'm picking it up now.
So it's funny because Matt, you're going C favorite nose, Leo. A for you, Matt. I'm going to go B. I like B.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. All right, so very much a split
Now
decision.
going back, I'm picking up some of the more, like, it's more full-bodied on A.
Yeah.
See, to me, B doesn't have that big punch up front, but to me, it has some depth, and I like the fullness, the roundness of it, and it's just kind of hitting with me.
All of them are kind of getting, and I mean, you can get like you get palate fatigue, you get
Nose
nose
yeah.
fatigue as well. But I'd say that A is kind of rounding out a little bit, and I like it as it's rounded out. C is really strong. B is actually really strong too. But I still gonna go with A.
I would go A, C, B in order.
Me too. A C B now would be mine.
I'm going to go BAC.
BAC.
Yeah, I got your back.
All right.
right,
Blood
that's pretty
alcohol
good, huh?
content.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm going to go TCB, taking care of business.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna taste them or what?
No. We're not tasting today.
Oh, we're just nose winners.
We're
Okay.
taste them at will.
Okay.
That's the next episode.
Okay.
next
Cool.
cast.
Let's keep them hanging.
Yeah, let's keep talking about. Tell me what was there any indication, Leo? You go every year, and for folks who are listening to this that don't know, Specs is a huge box store in the state of Texas, and they may be in a few other states now. I don't know, but they're definitely dominant in the state of Texas. And here in Houston, and I think they do it in San Antonio, and they may do it in the bigger markets like El
Dallas.
Paso and Dallas. They do their drop every year. And over the last few years here in Houston, it has gotten ridiculous. It has gotten out of control with people waiting in line for days. And people might have thought I was going to say hours, but no, it's days. They
Yeah,
camp
days.
out with tents. This year was no exception to that happening. What was a little surprise to me from what I heard, and you went, so you can tell me, was the bottles that were available that they waited out for. It wasn't quite as the higher end allocated bottles that we'd seen in the past, is what I heard.
I mean, they still had higher end allocated stuff, and
Did they have some full proofs from each Taylor? Did they have some
Yeah.
some BTEC stuff?
I mean, there's people, like that first wave of people, so if you think about like logistically, the way they have it set up is you kind of like snake around the store in line. Everybody goes through, you pick which products you want. The beginning of that all the way to the end is going to be mostly some shelf stuff like Stag Junior, mostly picks. And then when you get to the last little station, one of the last couple stations, there's just like a table with a bunch of allocated product on it, right? And so there was people that came out with BTAC, E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, Four Roses limited edition, your Russell stuff. And it was like you could grab one thing from that table, the high-end table, right? And so there's people that definitely came out with that stuff. And in terms of...
Was there as much of it as you've seen in years past?
I mean, I really didn't pay attention to is there much of it. You talk about people camping out days in advance. I'm not the type. I'm not going to do that. Like situationally, I wouldn't want to put up with the hell I was going to have to pay when I came home.
Yeah.
But I just wouldn't do it anyway. Like if I was just like a single guy, yeah, I'm not going to go multiple days in advance.
Well, and my thing is, there's a couple ways you can look at it. One, you want a really good bourbon to drink, or two, you want a really good bourbon to flip. I'm not a flipper, so I wouldn't do it for that reason. Maybe to drink it, to have a cool bottle that's, just very hard to find. But I don't think there's anything worth my time of 3-4 days to camp in line on the hopes that you might get something depending on where you are in line.
Yeah, I
I'm
would
just
agree.
not gonna do it.
I would agree. And in terms of like the craze, like I would say like it peaked last year. This year, there was a lot less people there for when the doors opened up. It was just that there was a lot more people camping out well in advance this most recent year.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like two different aspects. I think last year, 2 years ago, we all got there, around a similar point of time.
4 in the morning.
Yeah, the day of, right?
Yeah.
We all got there about a similar point in time. I got there like maybe 5:30 this year, and I was probably a couple hundred people ahead of where we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, I do want to say that, we're talking about, not this year, but the year previous, I did go. That was the first one I've ever went to. Mm-hmm. And I was reluctant to go, but a good buddy of mine told me how he had went the previous year, so 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And got there around 12:30, and there was no line. And he just walked in, Carter.
Yeah.
And got like Stag Junior.
Weller
and
12.
Weller 12,
got-
Eagle, they had...
Probably like a Four Roses single barrel pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, got all these great bottles. So you were like, and rightfully so, hey, Rob, if we get in line early, man, who knows what we're going to get? And I was like, sweet. Okay, well, I don't really want to do it, but if you got that at open at 12:30, 1 o'clock, let's go.
Oh, yeah.
And we were 6 blocks deep.
Hey, there's a guy that I'm not going to name on the show. I saw him go through the line multiple times.
Oh.
And then he got his wife to go through the line.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know who you're talking about. I thought I might.
Yeah. But we'll talk off air.
Wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
I can tell you that much.
When I saw that, I was like, and then I saw a post like within 30 minutes. I was like,
I have a good
Jesus,
guess. I think I have a good guess, but we'll talk later.
Yeah.
But my point is that, I was expecting to get in there, being in line. Maybe, the store opens at 10. I thought, well, we'd be in well before noon. We were so long on that line. We didn't get in till after 1 o'clock. You remember that?
oh, yeah. I mean, we were literally there like all morning.
That's what I'm saying. Like, 2 years ago was nuts. This most recent year was nothing compared to that.
We walked through the store. What did I buy?
One or two things, maybe.
I bought a store pick Blanton's and the kosher, the weeded.
Yeah.
And that's all I bought. Everything else, it was just like, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. It was an old Forester pick or this. I have enough of those. I don't need to just buy stuff to buy stuff because I got in line.
They had a ton of no thanks stuff again this year.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Did they?
I mean, you think like what we were talking about earlier about, some of the source stuff that is picks,
So I was just wondering is where it went from 2 years ago, the hype and not having stuff that, I wanted getting through there at the point that I did to this year. Did anybody come in late this year? I mean, at 12:30, 1 o'clock, was the line gone? When you talk about it wasn't as long?
Well, we had, we know somebody who went at around noon and still got some pretty good stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I just can't get lucky with my timing, I guess. This year might have been the year to do that again. But I think that's another indication that, I don't know. I don't know if that is or not, that the bourbon is kind of, Is there anything you take from those kind of drops that tells you bourbon is on the downward
I
tick?
do think that the market's softening, and I think the craziness is softening. You're always going to have the nuts that camp out. Like, you're always going to have those people. But, like, I mean, overall volume of the line, right? Like, to me, this year, like, I didn't go this year, but, like, I've heard from multiple people, it wasn't as bad. Like, just it wasn't.
Yeah, it was not as bad. You know, and talking about like some of the nut stuff is, I was talking to Rob about this Facebook group called Tater Tales that'll kind of like make fun of some of the crazy people. You know, in recent post on there's a guy that camped out days in advance in Alaska for a drop in negative 40-degree weather to get a couple Blantons.
Are you serious?
Yeah, to get a couple Blantons. And so you just kind of like, you know, there's still going to be the outliers, like Matt said, that are going to, you know, go full tilt to get a bottle or two.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at those drops, I don't really walk away from it with my satisfaction level being what did I get and what did I not get. Like, you know, part of going for me, and, you know, my cutoff is just going like super early in the morning, right? Like not the night before, is part of the experience of hanging out with folks in line, you know, sharing pours. I always bring a cigar to have while we're waiting on the, you know, the drop to start. And if I get one or two bottles that, you know, I'll enjoy, then, I mean, it's more than worth it for me. In comparison to some of the other stuff, you talk about like having more success going into stores now with product that's on the shelf is, you know, always try to like look at things from two sides of the spectrum. It's like, you know, people that, and the Tater Tales thing, like there's some like really funny stuff on there, but it's also like, you know, this viewpoint of like shaming people or looking down on people for like the choices that they make. And like an easy one is like folks that'll go to 2 or 3 liquor stores a week throughout the year, right? And then saying like, oh, well, I would never go to a drop. That's not worth my time is worth so much more than that. I'm just like, all right, well, what are we talking about? You know?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I'd say like, you know, for me, what I know this can, some people are going to like this type of comment. I'll just buy something on secondary.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you know, like if I just want something, like to your point, I think when we went that year of the drop, I got a little irritated on that year just because it took so long to progress through the store.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was annoying. You know, if I would have been out of there by like noon or even before noon, like 11 or something like that.
But that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Well, we had wives. We set expectations that, hey, we're going to go early. We'll be back early.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, shit. I mean, you know, because you have kids, Leo. Like, you got responsibilities there. You know, you can't just drop your shit and, you know, just be like.
Well, then you and I hit that line. He's like, okay, well, we've been here this long. Do we just bail?
Yeah.
And we were like, well, shit, we've been here this long. We got to stay in line and get something.
Yeah.
And I mean, it felt like the line wasn't moving for the first 2 hours it was open.
Yeah.
It felt like it took forever. And
Yeah.
that was frustrating. Took away from the enjoyment. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the, because, you know, if you asked me, I'd have been fine leaving because I got frustrated just standing there. But from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. when the store opened and everybody, you know, got in their position.
Yeah.
Walking around, having a pour, having a cigar, seeing some people, the camaraderie of it.
Yeah, I definitely missed
absolutely
having your coffee last year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I had a big thermos I took it there. That's right. Yeah.
No, but that part I like.
Which brings me to a question or, you know, a statement I'll make. What I don't see anymore, when I first got into bourbon, you know, in 2016, go ahead.
I'm not gonna strap on the feedback here.
One of the fun things I enjoyed was the bottle shares.
Yeah.
And I think we did those because there were so many of us, you know, getting into the bourbon world and the craze that some of us were finding things that now most of us have. And so it was cool to share. Hey, you know, I got this and you haven't had it yet, or this year's George T. Stagg or whatever it might be. And we would get together and do those bourbon shares. And I miss that. I mean, we don't do it anymore.
Yeah,
and
I think
it's partly due to everybody wants to, when you go to those, you feel like, maybe I'm wrong, people feel like they got to bring something that's unique or different or high end, and everybody has so much stuff, it's hard to, instead of just saying, let's just bring a couple of fun bottles and have a cigar.
So I was thinking about that recently, and the PG version of it is the elephant trunk, right? So everybody wants to bring the elephant trunk, or some people do, right? They feel like their value is going to be judged by how rare and or expensive the bottle that they bring to a share is, and do other people have it, right? And so, there's people in Houston that will specifically buy a bottle that to bring to a share as a status symbol. It's the elephant trunk, right? And
It's called me.
yeah, it's called It's called the Hound Dog.
I come in with the gold vein Weller 107, and I'm just like just laying on the table.
just
Fresh crack.
Yeah.
too many visual images going on. You got elephant trunk, you got
the
gold vein.
Got that elephant
You
trunk with
slam
gold
it
veins. It's like, damn, who was that guy?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I'll
but I
your
agree with you.
concentration.
And
there.
like what Matt said earlier, just to revisit that about like some people might have a problem with it, say like I'll just buy secondary. I don't think that a lot of people would have a problem with that. I think that a lot of people will agree with that. But that's also looking at it from your perspective, right? Where people like, you, me, other folks may have the opportunity to say,
Yep.
hey, I'd rather spend a couple $100 to just get this bottle now versus hunting. But there may be some people that are, earlier we talked about new entries into the market. Maybe you're young, you're 21, you're 22 years old, you just got out of college, and those people are going to be the ones that are going to camp out, right? Because they don't have, the money to just throw at secondary.
Yeah, sure.
And that's also is just like kind of looking at it from both sides is, the big thing for me is just like for people to be not so quick to make judgment on other people's choices without knowing what's going on,
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people think like, you just, like buying stuff on secondary, you're just some rich asshole that, like, whatever, didn't give a crap,
Which may not be true as well, right?
It's
Well,
not
but
necessarily true, but like you have to think about
I'm going to connect your two stories. To your point, if I want something, you're just going to buy it on secondary.
Yeah.
And you say that because you go, what's it going to cost me to drive around for a year?
Yeah.
To your point, you made the note of the guy who twice a week, he's in the same liquor store or multiple liquor stores checking for the course of a year. What is that time and gas and what has he spent that if you just go, I'm going to spend $300 on a bottle I'm looking
so much
for.
Easier. So much easier, yeah.
So you can do it either way. Maybe he
and
has
cheaper
the time.
if you do the math that way.
Absolutely. Now, depending on what his job is, maybe he's out and about and
It's convenient.
It's convenient. And he says, hey, I'm just going to take my time. I have the ability to check and look. And when I hit one, I'll hit one.
Yeah.
You don't have that time.
No.
So you go, I'm going to spend it.
Well, also,
So both are fair.
You have to come from my perspective. I mean, y'all have been to my house before. You've seen my.
I have not.
Anyway, but you've seen like the kind of the whiskey collection. I'm not like bragging on it. It's just like I've been doing this for a while, so I've got a bunch of bottles. I'm not like out there like,
over time.
oh man, I need a stag and I need or a stag junior and a eagle rare and I needed this and I needed that. I got all that.
Yeah.
It's so like
As we like to say in Alabama, the cupboard's full.
the cupboard's full. The
cupboard's full.
I mean, the stuff that I'm buying on secondary is like a special bottle. I always do this. I think I've told you this, and I may have mentioned this to you. I buy a couple of really high end bottles on secondary once or twice a year, just as a reward to myself, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'll buy like lower level stuff here and there.
Some of the stuff you can't get retail, like the Dusties, right?
Oh yeah, like
You have to buy secondary if you want to buy them. Yeah.
and
a
I've
fair
gotten
point.
into Dusties pretty big. So like
Anything from 1980.
yeah, I'm really excited about that pour. I did.
Marty McFly over here.
Recently acquire a old Overholt rye from 1980, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, I've tasted through all three, and I'm going to tell you my opinion. Not one of them's bad. All are delicious for different
agree.
reasons. Yeah.
I actually agree. And honestly, B is the biggest surprise of the bunch. when you taste through them.
Yeah. Tell me this. It's a 10-year bourbon. Are they? How does that work? Some are single barrels because I heard that they're on this line. They just dump it and then they bottle. So you're getting some single barrels, some not. What? I don't know how this works.
I think if you ask Wade, the way that it works, like I think sometimes like in a bottle you might pick up might accidentally be a single
like
barrel.
the majority single barrel. Yeah,
That's what I was thinking, Leo. That the majority are single barrel. It's when you get to the end of that barrel and they dump in the next one. Now you have a little blend and
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I was wondering because Eagle Rare, but
it just seems like it would be much more complicated to do it that way, like one barrel at a time versus just vatting a ton of it.
Is that what they're doing then? Are they vatting 50 barrels and then dumping it?
I mean, it used to be a single barrel product, right? And I think they removed that from the bottle. And based on what I've heard, is similar to what you're saying, Rob, is where they're just like dumping one barrel at a time.
That's kind of what I heard.
And then there's some runoff there from one barrel to the next where it's not going to be like a true single barrel.
That's kind of what I heard. Okay. So,
Yeah. That also, fun fact, was confirmed. Eagle Rare is all aged on the first floor of the rick house.
oh, is it really? I did
Yeah.
not know that. Did you
Yeah.
know that, Leo? I didn't either.
Yeah, so I always thought that Eagle Rare kind of has like a unique kind of quality to it, similar to like what I guess the lower like it kind of goes down to proofing down, right? Like if it's on a like lower in the rick house, you're having to add less water. If you're higher in the rick house, you're having to add more water to proof it down. So with Eagle Rare, you're getting less water added to it, which I always thought it like imparted a better flavor to the whiskey.
I'll tell you, the flavors on these are awesome. I'm enjoying all three of them. Not one of them is
Yeah, me too.
I've had some Eagle Rare picks that are a little off-putting that I go, not my favorites, kind of like Blanton's. But these three that we have here today, and let's talk about what they are. There are two Ryan's liquor picks. One that we all participated in here recently that just came out a couple months ago. And then one from, was it last year or a year before? A couple years ago? Matt, you brought that one?
Yep.
And then another liquor store here in town that we like, Longhorn Liquor.
Yeah.
And Mike Williams and his pick from, that's got to be 3 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago, something like that.
The three that we poured, we got the Ryan's, the Longhorn, and the Twin.
Yeah, we probably need to have those on the table.
Oh, okay. So we did. Sorry, I just bumped my
Watch
head.
yourself.
Yeah.
You want to grab those bottles?
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. Y'all keep talking.
We can talk while you're gone?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so we're kind of talking about picks. And, Bourbon Talk with this episode, we're talking about kind of where the bourbon world is. To me, another indication that we're kind of on this downward kind of slide in bourbon is I have not seen pick releases in the last year and a half like we were for the longest time. And again, I know a lot of that could be the recovery from COVID or getting back on track, or I don't know what the reason is, but I'm saying that could be part of it. But it used to be, we're in Houston market, big market, a lot of liquor stores. Used to be, you would hear every couple of months of somebody releasing a Four Roses or an Elijah Craig or a Russell's Reserve. I mean, I haven't seen a Russell's Reserve pick in the market for 3 years, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, Russell's has been pretty dry for a while now. Even the picks that they are doing, they were limiting to sending out samples instead of going to the distillery. I think, like, you think about specs, like one of the things that they've done is they've adjusted from releasing picks throughout the year to holding them for the drop. So, like, for example, they had 10 private barrels of Four Roses.
Oh, wow.
Release at the drop, right? And so if you think about, like, they could have released one almost every month throughout the year versus holding it for the drop. And you still see some of, like, the under-the-radar stuff, like Total Wine, or some of the other stores like Twin Liquors or Goody Goody. They'll release stuff and it'll just sell out very quickly, right?
Right.
Depending on what it is. Four Roses for sure, Weller Full Proof. So I've seen picks, throughout the year. Longhorn just had a Weller drop where they dropped a Full Proof, an Eagle Rare, and some other picks as well. So
I guess I'm just saying I don't see them. I don't see the on the Facebook groups and things as much as I used to, where it would be like, hey, next Saturday we're dropping, a pick from Eagle Rare and a pick from Elijah Craig or something like that. You'd see that at a lot of liquor stores. You'd be like, man, I'm going to go get in line and see if I can get one.
I think, I don't see that a lot as well. It does happen, right? And I think that may be like one of two things, right? The first thing would be is that kind of the fatigue for us when you talked about earlier, like, hey, when I walk into a liquor store, I'm not going to the bourbon aisle. I'm going to go check out tequila. I'm going to go check out rum. And it may be a similar thing, like when you do have downtime, instead of going to HBS and looking through drops, maybe you're listening to, Joe Rogan do his latest podcast, who doesn't need my plug.
Or food, wine, and whiskey.
Or food, wine, and whiskey. Yeah.
Food, wine, and whiskey.
Yeah, that would be a good plug.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, is just kind of like the fatigue of what our attention is focused on. And then the second thing would be just the sheer amount of volume that's in some of these groups now, right? So like if you look at when we got into HBS a couple of years ago, there was like I remember they were like, hey, we hit our 5,000th member today, right? And now there's almost 20,000 people in HBS.
Is it almost 20? I thought it was a little over 50.
Dang, I'm
so if you look at like just the sheer volume of post, the stuff that's going to come up on our feed may not be the drop, but it may be one of 100 posts that day, if that makes sense.
HBS did release a pick this past Saturday, yesterday. What was that?
A Blue Note?
Blue Note. Yeah. That's one I've seen some pics of. I've never even tried that bourbon.
Yeah, I think it was done by the Bourbon Babes.
Yep, sure was.
Do you see how many people we have?
It's like almost 16,000.
16, yeah.
Yeah, it's still a lot, though. I mean, like when I joined, it was well under 5,000.
Yeah.
And it's tripled in a few years, which is good. And honestly, I'd say this. I think the pick craze is kind of fallen off a little bit.
Too.
People were nuts about picks. Now, Four Roses, I think I'm going to put in a different bucket because their picks are so unique because of different recipes and all that kind of thing. But I would say the picks in general, man, that's fallen off big time.
And I would say if the picks were still as abundant as they were, I'd probably still be more hyped than I am with bourbon, because I really enjoyed the picks, especially Four Roses picks. I mean, I love when you can get one of the Four Roses picks or a Russell's Reserve pick, or
That's what I'm saying. Like if you use Four Roses as an example, they're allocating more product to the private selection program than they ever have before. So that the increase in demand may mean that, there's more private selections across the United States. Like they do more barrels through that program, but maybe it's more spread out because the demand is, and that might be part of something that you're seeing, Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about Ryan's Liquor, where we enjoy picking for on occasion, and big shout out to Bo for letting us do that, and Ann for letting us do that. But year after year, or for 3, 4, 5 years in a row, he was getting a Four Roses pick, and that was one we could always kind of I don't want to say count on, but had a good chance of getting a bottle or participating in. And he didn't get one this last year, and I don't know that he's going to have one this next year. And,
the last 2 years, I don't think it was. Like I said, I mean, Four Roses has a lot more barrels in. So I think he could have easily has had one the last 2 years.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, we won't get into that unless you want to.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
He hasn't had one, and so that's been a slight disappointment for me, because I've always enjoyed the Four Roses picks, and he had them there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years in a row. You guys were...
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of...
Playing Russell's. He was doing Russell's there for
Russell's.
Makers.
Makers are great.
Oh, man, we didn't do a Makers this past year, which is such a disappointment.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list. Russell's and Makers are on my bucket list for
Russell's on mine. Makers I've done, Leo. I mean, I don't know how you haven't.
God, what a flex.
I'm only...
Let's get table scraps.
I'm
used to it. Table scraps.
I'm only kidding, because this guy's the king of Four Roses.
Hey, I'll tell you what.
I mean,
we went up to do picks. It was in the wintertime, remember? It was November or December or something.
You guys
like
went
that?
after we went on ours in August.
Yeah. So
well, it coincided with Raj Bhakta's barrel purchasing schedule.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we wanted to make sure he was there. But but anyway, like when we went and did those picks, and we actually did a great, like Stellum was from where? Like, was it MGP or was it Kentucky sourced?
Oh, that one was Kentucky.
It was amazing.
No, the barrel was Kentucky. The Stellum
barrel
was MGP.
Okay. That MGP Stellum that we picked was
It
amazing.
was really good and a great value, too.
Great price point,
Yeah.
everything. Like, that was to me like one of
Was
the.
that the cherry cola sticker?
Yeah. We'll just kind of move on from that. But anyway, what I'll say about that pick is it was really good price, and it's easy to pick. I don't know. I mean, yes, we're drinking Eagle Rare.
Yeah.
It's easy to pick an Eagle Rare. They all taste pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, it's harder to pick an MGP, like just source barrel, and be like, okay, I want that one.
Okay, you mentioned your bucket list is Maker's Mark,
Russell's.
Russell's.
Yeah, I mean, those are probably like the top two ones that I haven't done. I've picked Buffalo Trace before, but not at the distillery. I haven't picked Heaven Hill, but like if they're like, all right, you can go to Kentucky, you can pick from two places that you haven't picked from before. Out of the handful that I haven't done, it would be Russell's and Maker's Mark would be my top two.
Matt, what do you want to pick that you haven't picked?
Russell's.
Yeah.
I haven't picked Russell's.
Hey, and you guys are saying Russell's. I'll do anything wild turkey. I don't care
You
if
get
you
up
tell
in
me
that
what.
Rick House. Yeah, I mean, it's like your options are Kentucky Spirit or Russell's,
Right,
right?
and I'm fine with either one. I
Yeah.
mean, I would prefer Russell's just because I like the 110 proof point on that better than the.
Both of the picking experiences would be the exact same. It would just be how much
Different.
they proof it down.
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
bottle it. Yeah.
So I'm fine with either one of those. But yeah, to your point, wild turkey is absolutely on my list that I want to go, and I would love to be able to do a pick there while Jimmy's still alive, and
Yeah,
he
same
makes
here.
he makes a little, hey, how you guys doing? You know, little show there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if anybody from Campari is watching or listening,
Yeah. Please
Throw us a
hook us
bone.
up with that.
throw us a bone.
Hey, also, if Julian Van Winkle's doing picks,
Oh,
still, like that, I shout out to that. I'd like to go with him and pick from his barrels.
Get a Van
Julian's
Winkle.
been asking to come on. I told him we'd try to make some time for him. I don't know when, but we try to see if we
You
could get
try
him
to
on the
wedge him in
schedule.
there somewhere?
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah,
I told
yeah.
him, give me a few months to work it out.
Oh my gosh.
But my other place I would love to do a pick is Jack Daniels.
Oh,
Not in
same. Actually, that would be on my list.
Yeah, I don't know, whether it's picking a rye or a single barrel strength or a barrel proof, but Jack Daniels going over there to Lynchburg, Tennessee, and Dry County with a distillery in it, and picking some bourbon would be fun there.
Yeah, I've heard that's a blast.
Yeah.
And some of their single barrel bourbons, they're doing ryes now as well. So
Yeah.
like, a lot of people say, if you think about Old Forester, they say they don't want to do a single rye program for single barrels because there's less variation from barrel to barrel with rye than there is with bourbon. But Jack Daniels is doing that now, and I think if I had to choose like bourbon versus rye, I might prefer to do a rye pick at Jack Daniels. And I've heard that it's just an absolute blast going out there.
Well, their rye is amazing. I mean, in general, I would say Brown Forman. Everybody's got their opinion about Brown Forman bourbon, but rye, I think most people can agree that they do a damn good job with that rye.
for sure.
Yeah. Old Forester's on my list, but if I were going to go back to Kentucky and pick another place that I'd really like to pick, it would be a Knob Creek from Jim Beam.
I've never
old
done
kind-
that pick either.
It's an old distillery. It's one of the legacy distilleries, and I just think it's got to be a cool experience to go in there and pick something there too.
Absolutely, I would think so.
Yeah.
I will tell you on the Old Forester pick experience, it's a good experience. Like
Yeah, I've done it a
the
couple times.
way that they do it, it's nice.
The
and then
table in the Rick House.
it's that's cool.
The tour, like if you haven't done it, they do like a really top notch tour leading up to getting in the Rick House to do the pick. So if you've been a couple of times and your team has done it before, you can skip that part. But like the whole experience is pretty top notch at Old Forester
Yeah.
for
I'd agree with that for sure.
And I've heard Heaven Hills improve their experience over what we've
In
experienced.
a massive way.
Good.
In a very massive way. Now I'm a Heaven Hill fan.
Give yourself a pat on the back there.
Yeah,
All
it's
your
because
feedback.
I just shouted out.
Torched them.
I
Torched them.
I can flame that place,
But it was deserved.
Yeah, because it was
It's
garbage.
terrible. It was garbage.
It was
But yeah,
garbage, but now it's really good.
good to hear that they've gotten things straightened out per your guidance.
Yeah, I mean they called me and they apologized and
Yeah.
stuff, but I told them here's how you fix it.
And they wrote it down and they implemented it.
Yeah.
Set aside a couple hand grenades for you.
Yeah, they sure did. They sure did. Yeah, and I've got the full decanter set of Old Fitz now.
Well, let's wrap up the episode with a couple things. One, are you or do you see people who have been into bourbon with you shifting to different spirits because of is this kind of you've kind of just overdone yourself in bourbon and you're trying to you enjoy spirits and what's else, it's going from just chasing bourbon all the time to going, I want to see what's the diversity in the world of spirits, what else can I explore and enjoy, whether it be scotch or rum or tequila or whatever it might be, gins, and then what's your buying habit for bourbons now? What do you guys are you still buying, or do you have so much surplus that you're just kind of drinking, and buying is just kind of when you see something unique or different, or a pick if you do? Or do you have some standard shelf stuff that, I'm just kind of drinking these standard shelf things, and when I run out, I just kind of refill
That's
those?
a good point, Rob. I'll tell you what I drink, like just on a normal basis, is George C. Stagg.
Wah, wah.
But no, what I drink most of the time, Maker's Mark cask strength. If I'm going to just pour myself something and it's just a crappy day or something like that, I just want to have a pour, chillax.
It's a great proof point. It's not too high in proof. And from a weeded whiskey perspective, I mean, it's hard to beat in terms of quality and value. We've talked about this before on the podcast is, people that are chasing the 107, chasing the full proof. If you blind Maker's Mark cask strength against Weller, a lot of times
it wins.
I've never had a time where it didn't come out on top.
Exactly.
I really don't mean for that to happen. It's just been that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just been a go-to bottle that I can always find. I'll have a pour of that, and then I've had myself a good evening. Yeah, like last night, I poured myself something special. Poured like a Dusty Wild Turkey, but like that's a Saturday night pour. Like if you're talking about like, hey, once or twice a week or something like that, like during the week, yeah, that's the kind of thing I drink.
Yeah.
And I'd say like as far as stuff that I'm hunting for, yeah, I mean, if I see some really special shit sitting on the shelves, sure. I mean, of course I'll buy it, but most of the time I'm not even hunting.
That's the thing for me. I like you heard me say, I don't even go down the bourbon aisle. I'm usually in a store for wine or something like that. And I might go say, see what I see in the rum aisle or anything like that. But I'm just not buying bourbon. And my wife, I think she appreciates and enjoys that I'm not spending money on bourbon like I used to. I just don't need it. I have enough stuff to just drink as that can be daily drinkers, and we can talk about.
Share.
Yeah, and what I do have is call them special bottles. I don't have the collections you two guys have, but I have enough that if somebody comes over, I can pour something that's still good enough to impress
Yeah, that
somebody.
looks like a garbage, little collection you got over here.
Compared to yours. And
So
Leo's.
we do some bartering. I'll trade you some bottles for wine.
Oh, we could do that.
Yeah.
I would do that. Yeah, for sure.
I don't have an E.H. Taylor barrel proof.
I've made an offer to you.
Yeah, I don't have, I've only got two 1855s left.
I didn't say 1855.
What do you want?
I said the 8-year 101s.
Yeah, I might be able to help
It's
you
not
there.
a bad trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you buy? What do you drink? I mean, I've gotten to the point where for bourbon, I mean, I think I'm just exclusively buying bourbons that I've picked.
Yeah.
Like most recently, pick dropped, and I bought a case of it, Four Roses, right? So you know, that'll hold me over for a while.
Sure.
And what I like to do is like share with friends, right? So like, hey, you know, 1 or 2 bottles that cost to some people that like Four Roses, and hold on to some for myself. And then like, I was thinking like, what is the most recent thing that I bought from a spirit standpoint was a single barrel El Tesoro Reposado.
Oh yeah,
you
that's
know?
good
So,
tequila.
Like, so it's venturing out, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, you get to a point where you feel like you're, you know, pretty well versed on what's out there in the market, what you don't like, what you do like, and that'll limit your purchasing. And then it's like, okay, well, what are some things that I don't have as much experience in? And you start like leaning that way, right? So like branching out more into wine, agave related spirits, rum. And you know, my opinion is like wine and agave is the go-to for Houston. It's just so hot, you know, for the majority of the year.
Well,
But, you know, wines and agave cocktails.
I
and
do
spirits
see,
can be
Cocktails
really
for
good, yeah.
sure.
So I see from the groups and people we interact with that a lot of us like to cook. And I think wine is, you know, guys who didn't and ladies who didn't drink as much wine a few years ago, I'm seeing are into that spirit. It's not even a spirit, that beverage a lot more than what I saw a few years ago. And I think that's great because, you know, wines, if I had to pick a favorite alcoholic beverage, that would be my favorite by a wide margin. So I think it's pretty cool that a lot of people are getting into wine because they absolutely love wine. I think it's cool that you're getting into wine.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it just like pairs with, you know, dining very well. Like when I was just like, you know, really a novice in general with spirits, you know, just like coming out of college, just crushing Wild Turkey 101 and Coke, you know, and slamming some cold snacks.
You could have done worse.
When I was getting into whiskey, I would like, you know, pair it with, you know, have a glass of whiskey while you're having dinner. But you don't really drink it much while you're having a meal, right? Like it may be sitting there. You may have a sip, maybe 2, but the wine is just so much more enjoyable.
I'm going to first start by saying all of them are delicious. There's not a bad one in the bunch.
You took the words right out of my mouth,
Okay.
Rob.
That's what she said.
Great minds think alike. So
That's what she
I
said.
think that all 3 of these, you know, hold their own very well, and are also, you know, very different. Even though they're all eagle rare, being, you know, they are single barrels. So like my favorite right now, and I think it's just like a preference thing. My favorite right now would be C. It was number 2 for the nose to me. It's got like a light citrus thing. It's earlier in the day, you know, so I feel like this is like a perfect ramp up pour. It's got good flavors. A would be my second. It was number 1 on the nose, but it's just like the most robust one and full bodied for me for flavor. You know, get a lot of baking spices. And then B would be number 3. And, you know, I did pick up some of the fruity stuff. So I like all 3 of them. And based on what we're doing right now, it's just like I would drink the most of C.
Okay. You want me to go next or you want to go?
I'll go. That's
Okay.
fine. My order will be A, B, C.
Really? Right
Yeah,
down the line.
Right down the
ABC.
line. So the reason I liked A the most is it's just the most balanced of all of them to me. Like it had a longer-ish finish. It had a really good nose. It had like kind of that traditional Eagle Rare kind of nose that I would expect, but amped up. And that's why I liked A. B, I thought was the nose kind of grew on me a little bit more, but B, I would say like it actually had to me the longest finish of all of them after I started tasting them more and more, and I thought it actually was like a little bit more of a puncher. And then C, I thought was really good, but very different. And so it didn't necessarily fit profile for me. And that's kind of why I ranked it last.
Yeah,
now, whether you would, like, depending on your mood, C might be the best one, you know?
Yeah, I would agree that, you know, A and B were much more similar than C.
Yeah, it just didn't fit profile, which doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It just means that's just, to me, it wasn't what I was expecting, so I didn't, you know, I ranked it third.
And it's funny that you just made that comment that A and B were more similar than C to you. because like you, and let me start. I think both of you made the point about mood could drive this, and right now I could see any of these, depending on my mood, being my favorite. You know, I could say I like any of them depending on my mood. But right now, my favorite is still B, on the nose and on the palate. But I thought B and C were the more similar pours. And I thought, you know, what I mean by that is I thought this was just high energy. This was like, you know, had some bite to it, had some like, hey, I'm here, punch, you know, and just let me know.
Like preference wise, like A would be my like, okay, like my after dinner, I'm winding down a good full bodied whiskey, you know.
B to me was like kind of mellow. Hey, dude, how you doing? Let's just kind of relax a little bit. And it was just kind of hitting me right now. It was just kind of sipping on it, just making me kind of go, just kind of kicking it, just kind of relaxing. And C was kind of somewhere in between where it was like a little bit more relaxed with that, but it had a little that citrus and that kind of on it, but not as high energy as A. And so, I went BCA as my favorite.
Well,
B was my.
Each of us had a different top pour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So B was my favorite.
A was my favorite.
And C was your favorite. Okay. Should we do the reveal?
Yes.
All right. Let me get the key, and we'll do this real quick.
Awesome.
Okay, Leo, you made a good point. You just said, what'd you say? There's no wrong answer.
No wrong answer. Yeah.
Getting that crunch on there, boys. We are recording.
Okay.
All right.
Are we live right now?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we're recording.
I'm over here strapping on the feedback.
1, 2, and 3. 1 is Longhorn. 2 is Ryan's. And 3 is Twin Liquor. And if we take that over to here, 1 is, and ours is A. So 1 is Longhorn.
A is Longhorn.
B, 2 is Ryan's. You're welcome. You're welcome, Bo. That was my favorite, Bo.
Yeah.
The only one
C
who
is
picked it, Bo.
twin liquor then.
And C is Twin Liquor.
Okay.
So A is Longhorn, B is Ryan's, and C is Twin Liquor.
All three very solid picks.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to make, is that all of them are just really, really good. And like I said, I could see, I really could. I mean, I thought they were all delicious. And when you're trying to pick your favorite, you're really splitting hairs. I mean, you pour any of these on any night by itself, and I'm going to think it's absolutely fantastic and delicious.
You could also have the exact opposite, right? So sometimes one pick easily comes to the top. These are all pretty neck and shoulders, even with each other. And I think it just goes to say, like we were talking about earlier, from a quality and consistency standpoint, the shelf products are a great value. But if you see a Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, a pick, just buy it.
Just pick it up. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the Buffalo Trace, if we had 3 Buffalo Trace picks here, we'd have a similar type of result.
I do have 3.
Yeah, so we need to run that back then.
We'll run that back with Buffalo Trace and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys, for doing this. Had a lot of fun. A little bourbon talk.
Absolutely.
Clarifying that wine is the only beverage that goes with food. So I was glad we got that done.
From a closed-minded individual.
I mean,
Let me shut my closet door and get back in there.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of fun having this conversation, fellas. Thanks for doing it. And we're going to get off here, go eat a burger, and maybe drink a little wine. Or do you want a bourbon with your burger?
No, I'll have wine.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.
Cheers, everybody.